everybody, June here again. I'm going to do my question and answer video for you. So, because I'm on a time limit with my husband's video, I'm just going to get started. Caitlin asks, why is it harder to connect to loved ones or people we knew as opposed to random spirits? That's a good question. It's not necessarily harder to connect to them. It may be, though, harder to recognize the communication because you're emotionally attached. So, for instance, for me, it's far easier for me to do readings for people and to connect with their loved ones than it is for me to connect with my loved one who's passed away, because he was very close to me, and it's hard for me to tell the difference, kind of what's me and what's him. Because those people are so close to you, it's hard to recognize them when they're around. So, again, I wouldn't say it's harder to connect with them. It may be harder to hear them or to communicate with them, just for the simple fact that you are close to them, and it hits so close to home that it can be so close to your own normal feeling that it's hard to recognize. Okay, Carol says, what happens to babies that don't make it to birth? Whether it's a miscarriage or abortion, are they with our other loved ones, or are they immediately reincarnated? In other words, let's say I was pregnant and had a miscarriage, then I get pregnant again. Would the other baby be reincarnated into the new child I have, or would that baby stay with our loved ones? Okay, that's a good question too. In fact, you guys have a lot of good questions for me on this thread. It depends on the spirit. If the spirit wants to reincarnate, it will do so. I've had sessions or readings with people where they've had a miscarriage and that spirit has brought itself right back into the next child, or that spirit of that child has told me it's going to continue to try until it makes it. Other stillborns or miscarriages I've had show up as babies in the arms of other loved ones, and they're kind of waiting to grow until their parents cross over. So it's really a decision that's up to that particular energy, and it can be any of the things that you mentioned. They can choose to come back, they can choose to stay on the other side. It's just really up to what they want to do. Kimberly says, I have precognitive dreams and they sometimes scare me, and was wondering why. Also, as a child, I also talked to the dead, but I seem to have lost the ability. Can it be retrieved? Okay, the only reason I can think of that you might be scared is because you don't understand. And of course, people are afraid of what they don't understand. The more that you kind of pay attention to it, the easier it will become to not be frightened of it. As far as your ability, of course it can be retrieved. All you have to do is pay attention to it. It's simple. It's really simple. All you have to do is pay attention to what's going on around you. Take an inward take an inward journey and listen to that still small voice. Listen to your intuition, and it will guide you to get those abilities back. Let's see. Barb says, I just wonder if when a person passes on, can they come back to this plane anytime they like, or do some pass and just don't make it yet to the other side? Can we stay around if we want to a while, or do we just go to the other side? Say, one time a friend passed on and limped. Okay, and he limped from being in a car accident. When he passed on, I swear I felt him limping behind me for a long time. I felt he wanted to tell me something but never knew what it was. Okay, so let's see. Yes, I think for the majority of spirits, they can come back here anytime they like. Some of them go on kind of like spiritual missions or journeys to where they can't be pulled away during that time period, but they can always come back. And that's, again, it's up to the spirit whether they want to come back here or not. And as far as your friend with the limp, he probably came through to you with the limp, so you know who he is, not because he still has the limp, but that's something that you would recognize him to have, and so that's why he would express himself in that way, so that you would automatically recognize who he was. Okay. Let's see. Marcia says, is it possible to explain what form you are in when you are in heaven? I know it isn't exactly body form. Is it just spirit, like invisible? Well, the form that we take is basically energy. And I think that there's a kind of fluid type of form that we take on after we pass. It's almost like a second physical body. It's not physical though. It's just kind of thicker matter than, say, just regular energy. It definitely has a shape and a form, and it seems to me that they can shift shapes and shift shapes and shift forms to where they can travel in a small amount of energy, or they can expand their energy to kind of take up this kind of space that we have here in the physical. But that's my best impression from what I've received from talking to spirits, is that it's really almost like a fluid form. Let me see. Okay, Cassiel, I hope I said that right. When did you realize you had your gift? What was it like in the beginning? How would you describe the experience of communicating with spirits? I really realized I had a gift when I was 29. I mean, I was in a car accident, and that's what kind of set off this entire chain of events. But at that point, I didn't just realize that it was happening now. I realized it had been happening my whole life. I've seen spirits since I was very young, as far as I can remember, far back as I can remember. But those experiences weren't always good for me. I was terribly disturbed by the energies I could sense and by the things that I could see. I had panic attacks. I wouldn't say I was frightened, but just very, very uncomfortable. Let's see. In the beginning, well, I just really didn't understand what was going on. I would see shadow forms. I would see people. I got pushed. Did not realize I could hear them until I was in my car accident, because I realized at that point that the communication is not just audible all the time, it's telepathic. And at that point, when I realized that, I realized I've been hearing them my whole life as well. How do I describe the experience? It's wonderful. It's fantastic. It's the single greatest gift outside of my family that I've ever received from God. It's peaceful. It's fascinating. It's so many things, and they're all positive. I am truly grateful for the experiences that I've had. They put a peace in my heart and a confidence in my step that life continues on, that we don't die. And it's truly, truly remarkable. I guess that's the best way I can put it. There's a lot of other ways I could describe it, but I couldn't think of the words. It's just, it's truly a blessing. Okay, Dawn says, mediumship seems to leave people with the impression that everyone that dies is hanging around the earthly plane. Though I am sure the individual can survive physical death, don't you think that some of the mediumship is only an aspect of psychometry and may only be reading echoes of personalities people have retained in their auras, for lack of a better buffer? Okay, that's another very good question. Psychometry is when you actually touch objects and you're picking up energy from them. So definitely, if you're talking about psychometry, you can definitely be picking up the energy impression on the objects. When I first started hearing spirits on a daily basis, I did go through several years where I did practice sessions, not only to develop, but to tell myself, this is really spirit. I'm not just reading somebody's mind. I'm not just picking up on that kind of aura information that they hold with them. And the reason I know this is because I often give people information that they are completely unaware of at the time, and that they'll go back and they'll tell me was accurate later after they've spoken with their family members or friends, or some time has passed and things that haven't even happened yet that I've kind of told them about that will actually occur the way that I've described them. So I know I'm not just picking up on that energy, but certainly it's possible, particularly if you're talking about psychometry, because you're actually, it's like an energy imprint on the objects. And no, everyone that dies isn't hanging around the earthly plane all the time. They come and go as they please, really. Aubrey says, what are some signs that spirit may be trying to communicate with us? Also, how do you channel spirits? How does a spirit know that you may be reading a specific person to them and know to come to you? Okay, what are some signs that the spirit may be trying to communicate with us? Well, if they're tapping on you, tugging on you, there's a tingly sensation like a static electricity that I get on the top of my head. That's a big sign for me when I'm out in public and I get that. I know somebody's trying to talk to me. But generally it's a gut feeling. In your gut, you just know. You know that somebody's there. You just feel it in your stomach. Also, you can pay attention to any kind of random thoughts or images that come into your mind. Persistent thoughts, the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not sure Why that thought or that image keeps coming up, that's a very big sign that somebody's trying to communicate with you. How do you channel spirits? Well, I wouldn't say that I channel spirits. I think people that channel spirits, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they actually allow the spirit to embody their physical being for a short period of time. I'm probably wrong. Then maybe channeling is just listening. But in any case, how do you do it? You have to learn to quiet your mind. That's the number one thing that you have to do in order to hear them. You have to learn to turn your mind off. It's very difficult. It takes time and practice. You can do it through meditation, but you have to learn to keep your mind still and quiet, and that's when you'll hear them the best, because if lots of stuff is going on in your head, they can't get a word in. So you must learn discipline of the mind and keeping your thoughts at bay so that you can listen. How does the spirit know that you may be reading a specific person? Well, the way that I describe it is almost like a bat signal. When we think about someone we love and we feel that emotion for them in our hearts and in our being, it's sending out a signal to them to come around. Not only that, but most of our loved ones, they're in and out of our life still. They know what's going on in our life, so they'll know because it's happening. Basically, that's how they know. So let's see, subtle signs of spirit communication. I kind of touched on that. It's feelings, intuition, pictures, images, words, sentences that repeat. Okay, Lori says, I don't feel my dad or my best friend around me, and they both passed, and I don't feel them around me. Why? I think that a lot of times people are so used to that energy that you'll get comfortable feeling it, so you won't notice a difference. So it could be that they're around you all the time and you don't notice because they don't leave. So, and you know, of course, I'm sure they go back and forth, but they're probably around you most of the time, and that's why you don't notice the difference, because it's comfortable to you that they're there, if that makes sense. My soulmate, Silverhawk Spirit says, my soulmate is on the other side. I miss the companionship that we had. Is it possible to have more than one soulmate in our lives? Absolutely. I definitely do believe in more than one soulmate. I also feel like that one person that you spend the most time with in your life is going to grow into being that soulmate. You grow together and you intertwine spiritually. But I do feel like there are more than one soulmate for each person out there, and they're not just people of the opposite sex. Some of your closest best friends might be, I call them like twin spirits or soulmates. I have a very close friend, Lisa, who I love dearly, and I feel like we are soul sisters. I feel like she's a soulmate of mine, and I feel like we've traveled together in this incarnation, in the last, and we will again. So definitely there are more than one possible soulmate for most people, or there is more than one rather. Let's see. So another person's asking me about communication. Just listen. Train your mind to stay quiet. That's really the best advice I can give you. Let's see. Natasha, I want to know where we come from and the secrets and the mysteries of the universe. Me too. But, you know, I get a glimpse. Sometimes I describe it as if I'm looking through a dirty window and I can just barely see through the pane. So the mysteries of the universe, I don't have all the answers to that. Where we come from, I believe, and I deeply feel intuitively that we come from another dimension, and we simply move. We shift forms from one form to the next. If you can imagine living on another planet and our bodies evolving on another planet, of course we'd adapt to the atmosphere, to the surroundings. And so I feel it's the same way. We have different laws. We have different ways of being in other dimensions, but that's where I think that we come from and where we go back to as well. Jody, why do the spirits in my house only show themselves to me? Okay, so, well, because you're sensitive. Other people maybe not, they can feel them, but they may not be able to see them because they don't have that ability. It's simply a matter of you being able to see them because you're clairvoyant. Let's see. Haley, crazy question, but I'm curious to know, do alternate realities exist? If so, does the other side see them all, or are they multiple realities for them as well? I would say alternate dimensions, which is the equivalent to realities in one regard. And yes, they do exist. That's where we exist. We travel on different planes of existence, different dimensions. On the other side, I don't know if they can see every single dimension. I think that they have access to that information, but I do feel, even as I'm speaking, that there are certain places that we're not allowed to see until we become a certain frequency, a high level, if you will, spirit that we'll be able to see more and more as we progress spiritually. So, for example, if you have someone who crosses over and they're very low frequency, or they haven't progressed spiritually at all, for example, murderers or molesters or people that are just kind of, we would look at them and say that they're evil. I think that they probably are limited in what they're allowed to see on the other side. So as far as all of them, I don't think they can see everything, but I think that they can see a lot more than we do. That's pretty certain. Eve says, one more thing, how do you meditate? Okay, goodness gracious, Eve, if you email me, I will discuss that with you. It's simple, but it's detailed. I have some exercises. Just give me an email through here, and I'll help you out with that. Oh, she wants to also know, is there a hell? What happens to the murderers when they die? Do they go after death? There is a hell. And to me, it's not a fire and brimstone kind of biblical, devilish place, but it's the equivalent, and we put ourselves there. So, say for a murderer, for example, I truly believe that like attracts like. Positive energy attracts positive energy. If you're doing something that's heinous, taking another person's life, molesting, beating, just being an awful human being, you're going to attract that toward you. So when you pass over, you're like a magnet for all those negative energies, so you will attract the demons. You will attract other souls that are like you, and for you or I, if we go to that place, it would certainly be hell, and it's certainly hell for them. They do have hope. They can spiritually progress if they choose to look outside themselves, accept what they've done, take responsibility for it, and do whatever they can to make amends and to learn and grow and progress spiritually. Joshua says, does death have an equivalent? And I am sorry, Joshua, but I really don't know what that means. I don't know what your question. I don't understand. So if you rephrase it, then maybe I can address it. Corina asks about heaven and hell also. I kind of just touched on that, but she says, as long as your death wasn't by suicide or you weren't a murder psychopath. Yeah, I really want to touch on suicides. Suicides are far different than murderers or these heinous kind of evil acts that people do. Suicides are often done in a desperation, in a depression, in very troubled emotional states, and it's not the same as being a murderer. I have seen many suicides cross over with success and spiritually progress and be set free and be at peace. It just depends on the spirit. The spirit must acknowledge what they have done, and they must be willing to progress. They don't go to hell unless you're a murderer and then you kill yourself. But normal suicides, people that feel trapped or stuck, certainly have to pay the consequences for what they did, but they're not hellish consequences. They're difficult. They are extraordinarily challenging, but it's not a punishment. It's more of a very in-depth schooling that they have to go through. Let's see. Eric says, do you tend to have better success with spirits that have recently passed or passed on some time ago? It doesn't really matter. I think I've contacted a woman the day after she passed, and I've contacted, oh goodness, sometimes I have readings where people want to come through all the way back into the 1700s, and I have to say to them, look, there's no way for this person to know what you're talking about, so give me your message and move on, because I don't know why you're showing me the Mayflower, okay? I don't know why you're showing me pilgrims, so, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It just depends on the energy and how well I'm able to connect with that energy. Candy, this is interesting. A psychic told my sister my parents were together and that they dance and eat hot dogs together. My mom craved hot dogs when she was in the hospital but wasn't allowed to eat them. What do you think? Can we eat after death? Yes, we can. I have seen lots of spirits come through with not only food, but with alcohol, cigarettes. Whatever that we take pleasure in here in life, we can take with us on the other side. It's, of course, not going to be a meal, but I think that we can experience the meal. We can have that experience rather than actually physically eating something, but I definitely feel like they can enjoy. I've had an experience where I astral traveled to a destination in the afterlife, and it was in a cafeteria, and people were ordering food. So definitely they can enjoy that if they want to. Last question, very important. Miranda says, I want to meet with a medium, but I'm told it's a sin that I would be communicating with evil. Miranda, do I look evil to you? I'm not, and mediums are not evil. It's in general, you know, it's the person, it's the intent. I certainly have come across psychics who want to rip people off, and they want to charge them $600 to cleanse their chakras or to get rid of evil spell or something. Those things are ridiculous. You want to avoid people who take advantage of you. But I wholeheartedly believe that spirit communication is not a sin. It's a gift from God. He allows us to communicate, to continue our relationships, to comfort us in our loss, because we must suffer loss in this life. But God allows us to be comforted by those people that we've loved, so that we know that this life is important. The things that we do are important. We must be kind. We must be sharing. We must be giving. We must be patient. And these are all things that I work on daily. I'm not obviously perfect. I mean, I get upset. I'm mean sometimes, and I just try to learn from those experiences and not repeat them. But it's certainly not a sin. But what I would tell you to do is look inside yourself. What I tell people, look inside yourself. Listen to that still small voice. If it tells you that it's okay, then it's okay. If it feels wrong to you, then you shouldn't do it. It's just really a matter of what your gut tells you. But as for me personally, I absolutely do not believe that communicating with the spirits of our loved ones is a sin. It's a gift. It's a comfort. It's joyful, it's peaceful, it's every wonderful thing that you could possibly hope to have after you lose a loved one. And anything that pure and that good and that peaceful must come from God, because the devil or evil or whatever you want to call it doesn't waste its time comforting people. It doesn't waste its time teaching people to help others. Those are godly things. So again, no, it's not a sin. But look inside yourself for the answers, Miranda. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up, but I want to thank you all again very much for trusting me with the incredible privilege and honor of connecting you with your loved ones. Some of my readings are magnificent, stellar. Every last piece of information that comes through is perfectly on target: names, dates, ways of passing, details. Other readings are more like pulling teeth. So I want to say thank you for sticking with me through the easy readings and the difficult readings. It's truly a journey that we're taking together, and I hope to bring you many more inspirational messages for years to come. You guys take care, and have a good night.